Today General Hospital will reveal Valentin Jacinda's official return to Port Charles marks not just the reappearance of a long-absent figure but the eruption of a storm that threatens to consume the entire community in blood, betrayal, and fear. The revelations from the production team of General Hospital have stunned loyal viewers who long suspected that Valentin's reemergence would be dramatic. But few could have predicted the full scope of devastation. No longer content to manipulate from the shadows, Valentin has crossed an irreversible line. He is the man who pulled the trigger on Drew Kane, leaving him clinging to life and altering the fragile balance of power in Port Charles forever. The act is not simply one of vengeance but of reckless brutality, a message to everyone that Valentin's thirst for dominance outweighs reason, mercy, or restraint. Even as the city reels from this revelation, the shockwaves only intensify with the sudden emergence of Justinda, a figure who has inexplicably come to hold the keys to the darkest truths. For reasons still shrouded in mystery, Justinda knows not only that Valentin was the one who shot Drew but also the identity of the hidden hand that ordered the hit. Her knowledge shakes Port Charles to its very core because it suggests a broader conspiracy that stretches beyond alone Jacinda's vendetta. Fury spreads like wildfire as residents begin to question why Justinda withheld such explosive information until now. Was she complicit by her silence? Was she protecting herself? Or was she biding her time to strike when it would cause the most chaos? Her decision to reveal or threaten to reveal this knowledge transforms her from a bystander into a manipulator who can bend events to her will. At the center of this chaos lies Drew, hovering between life and death in the sterile walls of General Hospital. His body may have survived Valentin's bullets thanks to skilled surgeons, but his mind remains a terrifying question mark. Doctors warn of potential long-term complications, brain trauma that could erode his memory, neurological damage that might alter his personality, and psychological scars that could render him unrecognizable even to those closest to him. This uncertainty casts a shadow over everyone who cares for him. Would Drew awaken as the same man determined to pursue justice and defend his familiar? Would he emerge twisted by his injuries, consumed by paranoia and rage, unable to discern friend from foe? The very thought of Drew's return as a hollowed, distorted version of himself sends shivers down the spines of those who wait at his bedside. Meanwhile, Valentin thrives in the chaos. Having slipped free of Steinmauer, he reappears in Port Charles like a predator unbound, with no pretense of limits or morality left to restrain him. His calculated vendetta against Jack Brennan becomes the axis around which his new reign of terror spins, yet its reach is far wider than Brennan alone. Carly Spencer, unwittingly caught in the gravitational pull of Valentin's schemes, finds herself placed in mortal danger. Transformed from bystander to pawn in a high-stakes chess match she never chose to join. Every step Valentin takes is designed to fracture the lives of those around him, ensuring that no one in Port Charles can escape the consequences of his resurgence. Even more unsettling is the transformation of his daughter Charlotte. Once seen as a vulnerable child, she begins to mirror her father's darkest traits, revealing cunning instincts and manipulative behaviors that hint at a Jacinda legacy etched into her very blood. Her ability to exploit her bond with Valentin becomes a subplot that carries implications for the future. Will Charlotte become another victim of her father's corruption? Or will she emerge as his true heir, inheriting his ruthlessness and ambition? Her gradual descent into shadows adds a chilling undertone, suggesting that Valentin's crimes may ripple through generations. Anna Devane, too, stands at a perilous crossroads. Her long and complicated history with Valentin ties her fate to his in ways she cannot easily sever. Her instinct as an agent is to stop him, to contain the destruction before it spreads too far, yet her lingering emotions for him cloud her judgment. Anna is caught between her duty to justice and the pull of old affections, knowing that any hesitation may cost innocent lives. Each move Valentin makes forces Anna to confront her own limits. Can she bring herself to betray her heart in order to save her city? Or will she falter, allowing herself to be drawn back into the darkness Valentin so effortlessly commands? The return of Valentin Jacinda is more than just a character comeback. It is the ignition of a firestorm. His actions against Drew set the stage for a wider war. Justinda's secrets promise to destabilize every fragile alliance. And the looming possibility of Drew awakening as something less than himself promises yet another twist of tragedy. With Charlotte inching closer to her father's shadow and Anna trapped between love and law, Port Charles has become a battlefield where every relationship, every secret, and every choice may tip the scales toward ruin. The air is thick with the scent of betrayal and the certainty of blood. And as Valentin moves like a phantom across the board, one truth becomes clear: Port Charles will never be the same again. The story grows even more volatile as fragments of the truth about the mastermind behind Drew's shooting begin to surface. Jacinda's revelations peel away the illusion that Valentin was acting alone. He was merely a weapon in a far larger, more sinister design. The question that hangs over Port Charles is chilling in its simplicity. Who has the authority, resources, and cruelty to command a Casa Dini, one of the most formidable and feared names in soap opera history, to carry out such a task? The answer to that question is not merely about exposing one hidden player, it is about detonating the fragile fabric of Port Charles itself. For if this figure is named, the fallout will not stop with Valentin's ruin. It will spread to every corner of the city, ensnaring leaders, allies, and enemies alike, tearing apart relationships that already sit on the knife's edge of collapse. Jacinda's role in all of this transforms her into both savior and saboteur, the paradox that no one can fully trust. Her knowledge runs so deep, her access to forbidden truths so vast, that those around her cannot tell whether she is a reluctant whistleblower or a calculating puppeteer. Her timing, her methods, and her motives all raise alarms. If she truly wished to protect Drew or bring Valentin down, why remain silent for so long? Why wait until the city was at its most vulnerable to unleash a cascade of revelations? This ambiguity transforms her into the most dangerous element of all, an unknown variable. People whisper in corridors, unsure whether to embrace her as an ally or fear her as the architect of chaos, and this very doubt spreads panic through Port Charles like a contagion. Amid this storm, Drew's condition becomes both a rallying point and a powder keg. His survival after the brutal attack is hailed as a miracle by his family and those who still cling to hope. Yet the optimism is fragile, a thin veil over gnawing terror about what happens when he wakes. If Drew opens his eyes with his memories intact, he becomes the living witness who can expose every detail of the plot, delivering testimony that could shatter the empire of those who conspired against him. But if the trauma has rewritten his mind, the nightmare deepens. Memory loss, confusion, or a shift in personality would make him vulnerable to manipulation. In that state, he could be twisted into a pawn, weaponized against those he once loved, and turned into the very instrument of destruction meant to finish the job Valentin's bullets could not. This looming uncertainty ensures that Valentin himself, though already condemned in the public's eyes, does not bear the full weight of suspicion. When the name of the one who hired him is finally spoken, every corner of Port Charles will quake. No haven will remain untouched because the mastermind's reach will undoubtedly stretch into alliances and institutions once thought untouchable. The revelation promises to collapse facades, destroy reputations, and ignite vendettas that will pull even the most cautious residents into the battlefield. It is not only Valentin who will be hunted, the city itself will be thrust into a survival game where no one can claim innocence. In the midst of this treacherous landscape, James Patrick Stewart's return as Valentin Casa Dini is a triumph of character work, proving yet again why his presence reshapes the entire canvas of General Hospital. Valentin is never simply a villain. He is a labyrinth of contradiction, caustic and lethal, merciless and vulnerable, a man whose wounds make him as pitiable as they make him terrifying. His involvement transforms every interaction into a high-stakes gamble, every secret into a potential bomb. He radiates the aura of inevitability, the sense that no matter how far others try to run, they are all trapped within his shadow. With Drew suspended between hope and disaster, Jacinda holding truths sharp enough to cut through alliances, and Valentin moving like a predator in a city already fractured, Port Charles teeters on the brink of implosion. Brennan finds himself unwillingly dragged deeper into the maelstrom. Carly becomes an unwilling pawn in Valentin's revenge. And Anna wrestles with the impossible choice between justice and her haunted connection to the man she cannot fully let go of. The city becomes a chessboard where every piece is unstable, every move fraught with peril, and every secret a potential detonation waiting for the wrong moment to explode. The return of Valentin Casa Dini, layered with Jacinda's dangerous revelations and Drew's uncertain awakening, ensures that the next chapter of General Hospital will not be defined by quiet resolutions but by detonations of truth and betrayals no one saw coming. It is not merely a storyline, it is an earthquake designed to rip apart every foundation of loyalty, family, and power in Port Charles. Viewers will not simply watch this unfold, they will be dragged into the storm, questioning at every turn who can be trusted, who will fall, and who will rise from the ashes of destruction that Valentin has left in his wake. The cascading events now gripping Port Charles are not simply a sequence of individual tragedies but a sweeping reconfiguration of power, identity, and loyalty within the world of General Hospital. Every character finds their fate hanging by a thread, their choices bound to the unfolding storm. Drew, shot down by Valentin, lies suspended between life and death with the weight of the city's anxieties pressed upon his fragile body. If he returns, it will not be as the man who left, but as someone reshaped by trauma, mind-scarred, fractured, and potentially unrecognizable. Valentin, ruthless in his pursuit of vengeance, has already sacrificed too much, and though his thirst for power may be temporarily sated, the toll exacted upon his relationships and the community around him will leave scars deeper than any victory. And Justinda, holding the dangerous knowledge of the mastermind's identity, positions herself not as a passive observer but as the spark that may ignite a wildfire too large to contain. With these three at the center of chaos, Port Charles approaches a precipice more perilous than any it has faced before. The quiet of Drew's hospital room belies the violent storm raging outside. The faint rhythm of his breath is a fragile reminder that hope has not yet been extinguished, but the doctor's prognosis casts an ominous shadow. The bullet lodged by Valentin did more than tear through flesh, it left irreversible neurological damage. The fear of memory loss now looms heavy, with the terrifying possibility that Drew will awaken devoid of the recollections that could expose his attacker and the conspiracy behind him. Short-term amnesia may erase the very moments of the shooting, rendering him unable to identify Valentin or name the one who orchestrated it. Worse still, long-term memories may have been disrupted, potentially stripping him of the ties that anchor him to his loved ones. The threat extends beyond memory. Neurological damage can rewrite personality itself, creating a man unmoored from his old identity. Drew could awaken with violent tendencies, deep suspicion, or erratic behavior, and settling those who once relied upon him. In this altered state, he would be vulnerable to manipulation, an unwitting pawn whose very instability could be weaponized in a larger game. The people who stand at his bedside waiting for hope may find instead a stranger Simeon malleable, unpredictable, and easier to control. It is this possibility that haunts them most, the fear that Drew's survival could paradoxically become the catalyst for even greater destruction. Into this crucible steps Justinda, seizing her moment with cold calculation. She does not rush to expose Valentin, nor does she rush to unmask the one who ordered the attack. Instead, she parcels out her knowledge like currency, hoarding it as the most valuable weapon in her possession. With Valentin, she insinuates the truth that could strip him of what little leverage he retains. Her silence is conditional, her threats are veiled but unmistakable. Unless Valentin bends to her demands, unless he acknowledges her as a force to be reckoned with, she will expose the damning connection that ties him to his employer. A revelation that would destroy his fragile attempt to reassert dominance. With Brennan, her tactics shift but remain no less menacing. She dangles her information before him like bait, reminding him that the shadow of exposure hangs over his every move. Brennan, who thrives on control, suddenly finds himself shackled to uncertainty, forced to act cautiously, never sure when Justinda might decide to tighten her grip. By keeping both men in her orbit, she places herself at the epicenter of a conflict too volatile to predict, ensuring that neither side can proceed without accounting for her influence. What once seemed like Valentin's story of vengeance or Brennan's game of power now becomes Justinda's battlefield, her knowledge transforming her into the unseen hand directing the war. Her manipulations raise new and uncomfortable questions. Is Justinda merely exploiting an opportunity, or has she always been part of a more elaborate design? Her sudden emergence with such precise, devastating knowledge suggests connections that have yet to be revealed. Is she playing the city to her own advantage, or is she an instrument of the very mastermind she claims to expose? Her silence until now breeds suspicion, for timing is everything in Port Charles, and her decision to act at this exact moment cannot be dismissed as coincidence. Every revelation adds another fissure to an already unstable foundation. Drew's condition, Valentin's unbridled vendetta, Brennan's compromised position, and Justinda's dangerous influence converge into a storm that cannot be contained. Port Charles stands on the brink of upheaval, where every truth risks becoming a death sentence and every secret holds the power to destroy. No one is safe in this environment, where allies can transform into enemies with a single revelation, and victims can be refashioned into pawns in a game larger than themselves. What makes this chapter so compelling is not simply the drama of survival or the spectacle of betrayal, but the inevitability that no matter who triumphs, the cost will be devastating. Drew may rise, but as a man scarred beyond recognition. Valentin may win his revenge, but at the expense of everything he once loved. Jacinda may wield her secrets like weapons, but in doing so she risks detonating a war that could consume even her. In Port Charles, destiny is never a straight line but a labyrinth of shifting allegiances, where every step forward may be a step into the abyss. Justinda evolves into the most dangerous kind of manipulator, the sort who wears two masks at once and convinces everyone she is something she is not. To Valentin, she becomes an insidious adversary, forcing him to bend where he would otherwise break others. To Brennan, she is the whisper in the dark that keeps him sleepless, the unshakable reminder that his empire is vulnerable. Outwardly, Justinda crafts the perfect image of bravery and virtue, a witness who risks her life to expose the monstrous deeds of men more powerful than herself. Yet behind that facade lies a cold strategist who does not seek justice but leverage. Every secret she hoards, every truth she manipulates, every threat she cloaks in silence, these are her weapons, and with them she pushes both men into a trap from which neither can escape. By sowing fear with precision, she paralyzes Brennan, making him cautious where he was once confident, while simultaneously clipping Valentin's wings, forcing him to question every move. Around them, suspicion spreads like smoke, seeping into every corner of Port Charles until no one knows who to trust. Anna feels the weight of this more keenly than anyone. She has lived long enough in the shadows of espionage to recognize the dangers of premature exposure. If Jacinda unleashes her truths recklessly, it will not cleanse Port Charles of corruption but ignite it in a blaze of hatred and blood vengeance. Anna sees the city teetering on a precipice, where one poorly timed revelation could topple everything into chaos. Her instincts tell her to act, to control Jacinda or at least contain the storm, but her emotions complicate the mission. Valentin, the man she once believed she could save from himself, is now caught in Jacinda's web. To betray him fully is to sever the last thread of their shared history. To protect him is to risk being consumed in the conflagration Jacinda seems determined to start. Carly, meanwhile, finds herself dragged into this deadly game with no warning and no choice. Once a formidable player in her own right, she is shaken to discover that both Valentin and Brennan now see her not as an ally but as a pressure point to exploit. For Valentin, Carly's closeness to Drew makes her a target, a vulnerability he can manipulate to gain control over a man who might one day awaken with damning truths. For Brennan, Carly is a distraction to be weaponized, a pawn whose fear and confusion can weaken their position. The realization that she is not merely an observer but a piece on the board terrifies Carly, and in that terror, she begins to understand the magnitude of the war being fought around her. Charlotte watches everything unfold through the eyes of a child who should be innocent but instead is shaped by shadows. She sees her father Valentin, once untouchable, twisted between Jacinda's threats and his own simmering vendettas. Rather than recoil, Charlotte absorbs this duplicity, internalizing the Casadini instinct to manipulate before being manipulated. Each display of fear or compromise from her father feeds her own emerging cunning, until the line between inheritance and corruption blurs entirely. She does not merely observe, she learns. And as she learns, she becomes something new, a younger reflection of the Casadini darkness, already prepared to step into the roles Jacinda and Valentin carved before her. In the midst of this unraveling, Drew lies at the edge of consciousness, his mind a battlefield as fragile as his body. The possibility that his memories may return only in fragments makes him an ideal vessel for Jacinda's next play. With his defenses shattered, Jacinda could weave her own narrative into his fractured recollections, feeding him a version of the truth that aligns with her designs. In doing so, she could turn him against those who most desperately want to protect him, convincing him that his allies are traitors, that his enemies are saviors, or that vengeance is the only path forward. In her hands, Drew ceases to be a victim and becomes a weapon, one capable of delivering chaos with greater efficiency than even Valentin himself. The danger deepens when one considers the possibility of Drew's personality being altered by the neurological trauma. An unstable Drew, prone to paranoia or violent outbursts, would be terrifying enough on his own. But under Jacinda's influence, he becomes the perfect instrument of disruption, a blade she can wield without ever appearing to draw blood herself. His mistrust could shatter alliances within Port Charles, his aggression could destabilize families, and his thirst for answers could be redirected into a thirst for destruction. The very man who once embodied resilience and loyalty could, under Jacinda's careful orchestration, become the dagger that cuts deepest into the heart of the city. What makes Jacinda so lethal is not simply the secrets she holds but the timing with which she chooses to reveal or distort them. Each truth is a card she plays only when the stakes are highest, ensuring maximum damage and maximum gain. Her presence transforms every scene into a question mark, every decision into a gamble, because no one knows whether she will expose, conceal, or manipulate. In a city built on fragile trust, Jacinda becomes the embodiment of uncertainty, the storm that none can predict but all must endure. Jacinda understands better than anyone that information is not merely knowledge, it is power, and in Port Charles, it is the most dangerous weapon of all. She does not squander the secrets she possesses by delivering them in one dramatic revelation. Instead, she employs a far more insidious tactic, the art of the slow drip. Each disclosure is measured, calculated, and perfectly timed, designed not to resolve the chaos but to prolong it, to keep the city perpetually on edge. By revealing fragments rather than the full picture, she ensures that doubt thrives, suspicion festers, and no alliance remains stable. This deliberate pacing transforms her from an outsider looking into the central figure of the unfolding catastrophe, the puppet master manipulating every string. What she withholds is as potent as what she shares, and her silence is never neutral, it is an implicit threat, a reminder that she holds more than anyone can see, and that at any moment she can detonate truths sharp enough to destroy reputations, families, and lives. The secrets themselves take on a life of their own under her control. Rumors whispered in hospital hallways, insinuations planted in casual conversations. Subtle warnings delivered to those most vulnerable. Jacinda spreads just enough to fracture trust but never enough to unify her adversaries against her. By carefully controlling the flow of information, she prevents Brennan from moving decisively, forcing him into a perpetual state of paranoia. Valentin, for all his ruthless cunning, is forced to restrain himself, because he cannot predict when or how Jacinda might unleash her arsenal against him. Even Anna and Carly, women who pride themselves on their strength and instincts, find themselves second-guessing every choice, unsure whether Justinda is truly an ally or the architect of their undoing. As Justinda solidifies her dominance, the atmosphere in Port Charles grows unbearably fragile. Drew, lying in recovery, is the wild card that no one can ignore. His condition carries the weight of both hope and terror. Should he awaken with clarity of mind, he could unravel Jacinda's careful manipulations and expose the conspiracy at its core. But the possibility of cognitive damage leaves him vulnerable to becoming a pawn instead. Someone whose testimony could be bent and reshaped by Jacinda's influence into a weapon against his own allies. Every person at his bedside knows that Drew's first words could alter the trajectory of the entire conflict, could be the spark of truth that burns away the lies, or the blade sharpened by Jacinda to cut through the heart of Port Charles. Valentin, meanwhile, lurks in the background like a storm building in silence. His vendetta against Brennan remains his primary focus, yet Jacinda's control over the narrative chains him in ways he has never experienced before. For a man accustomed to orchestrating fear, it is an intolerable reversal to find himself manipulated by another. Every moment he delays his revenge is another moment Jacinda tightens her hold, reducing him from predator to prey. And yet, Valentin's silence should not be mistaken for surrender. He is the Casa Dinier, and his capacity for destruction, once unleashed, could turn the entire city into collateral damage. Brennan, on the other hand, wears his fear openly. Once the calculated tactician, he now finds himself crippled by Jacinda's threats, unsure whether to appease her, confront her, or eliminate her before she eliminates him. Each day that passes without decisive action erodes his confidence, leaving him exposed not only to Jacinda's influence but also to the wrath of Valentin, who circles ever closer. Brennan is a man cornered, and cornered men are often the most dangerous, but in his desperation, he risks igniting the very war Justinda seems determined to provoke. At the center of this delicate balance stands Justinda, her posture calm, her expression unreadable, as though she alone has mastered the storm. To outsiders, she may appear to be the lone voice of reason, a woman unafraid to challenge men like Valentin and Brennan. But beneath that veneer lies a strategist who thrives on chaos. By ensuring no one knows the full truth, she forces everyone to act on half-truths and assumptions, driving wedges between allies, deepening divisions among families, and reducing every bond to a test of endurance. She is not merely playing the game, she is rewriting its rules. The result is a Port Charles caught in the most precarious state it has ever known. Drew lies between recovery and ruin, his future and the city's intertwined in ways no one can predict. Valentin stalks in the shadows with vengeance coiled tight inside him, ready to strike the moment Justinda slips. Brennan trembles under the weight of her threats, a man unmade by the very secrets that could expose him. And Justinda remains the axis around which all these fates spin, the only one who seems untouchable, the keeper of truths that could annihilate everyone in her path. Every move from this point forward has the potential to ignite a conflagration. A single whispered secret could topple Brennan. A single act of defiance could unleash Valentin's wrath. A single word from Drew, altered or genuine, could set fire to every fragile alliance left standing. And above them all stands Justinda, the queen of uncertainty, turning Port Charles into a battlefield where the lines between truth and lie, justice and betrayal, loyalty and ambition blur beyond recognition. In such a world, survival is no longer about strength but about deception, and the only guarantee is that when the storm finally breaks, no one will emerge unscathed.